Hello and welcome to the Webinars for Excellence with Yogi and Jeev. Today is the 10th of October 2017. We do these webinars every week. It's a 30-minute non-sales webinar each week on the overall topic of excellence in personal and professional lives. The topics each week are more specific. And lot of our audience also join us in our past recordings because all the recordings are available for free. I want to take a moment and welcome each one of you, even if you're watching this offline, and give you a personal welcome. This is important for all of us because this creates communication, this creates a two-way interaction. And if you're watching it offline, please feel free to send us comments and replies because we engage in that discussion. One of the key ways in which we do this is through the medium of storytelling. And this is where I hand it over to Yogi. Hi, Yogi.
Hi, Gio. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Today's topic is change. That's right. Change is law of life. There is nothing permanent except change. Change per se is not sufficient. There are two broad classifications of change. One of them is, of course, outward change, such as change of location, change of schools, change of country, change of spouse. And there is another one which is inner change. The change from the inside out. This means changing the way you think, the way you speak, the way you feel, and the way you act. All in the way. But it's only through the second kind of the change, the inner change, that you can have the promise of personal growth. A pattern of failure is a sign that there is a need of change. Well, I have a story, and the story that I would like to share with all of you. Well, it's a story about this guy and his son. One winter, they're sitting in the sitting room. It's cold winter night. They have a lovely fire going. Near the fire, there is a dog. The dog just lying there. And the father is reading his newspaper, and the son is sitting there doing his work, playing his game. And every now and then, a dog decides to make a noise, howling son. And son looks at the dog, and the dog then settles back into his comfortable position. And a few minutes later, dog howls again in the same manner. The son notices, watches dog shuffle, gets back into comfortable position, and he does it again. And that's the point. Son actually turns around to the father and says, "Father, why this silly dog is making those kind of sounds? What's going on? Why does he keep on howling?" And that's where father turns around to son and says, "Son, you see where the dog is lying, underneath there is a nail poking. And that nail, every time the dog actually shuffles, pokes it, and it pains him, pains the dog. And that's why, because of the pain, the dog actually howls." So the son, listening to that, turns around to the father and says, "The father, why this silly little dog why doesn't he just get up and just go across on the side of the fire and just lie where there is no nail?" And father looks at the dog, looks at the son, and says, "Well, son, I suppose the pain is not big enough."
Wow, that was quite powerful, Yogi, because it took me a moment to understand that your pain is actually driving the positive change. And if your pain is not big enough, or we are tolerating that pain to that extent, people are not changing. That's that's very strange to start with. At the same time, it's what we see in life. What do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Do that you see for some people the pain, physical pain or emotional pain, they there are times where like in boxing when you throw the towel, and that pain becomes big enough, or some for some people it's too late. Um, so acknowledging the pain, acknowledging that it requires the change. That people, you see, if goals are to be achieved and success is to ensue, you must recognize that failure in order to see that as a sign for you to change.
For changing, for
Yeah,
driving that, for triggering that to start with. In fact,
start.
that reminds me of an interesting analogy where you must have heard of the boiling frog, where the frog does not understand the
Yeah,
water around him is slowly increasing in temperature, and he gets
mhm,
used to that until the point that he perishes in boiling water. To
absolutely,
see that, and many a times we see this in personal lives as well as corporations, where people do not acknowledge the change to start with, and by the time they acknowledge, it is already too late, or a big loss or harm has been done, which could have been avoided to start with. And this is where I like your concept of starting from inside, because when we don't start from inside, the external symptoms, in fact, there is a medical terminology, there is a reason for it and there is a symptom for it, and the symptom is telling us to change inside. we have
absolutely. Because
we have to
yeah,
change
it's
inside.
yeah, because you see what happens with the external change is when you actually do provide that for a momentary, for a small little time, like actually that change becomes, oh wow, new area, new house, new car. But then that external change, for sake of, for per se change, actually dies down, and you become comfortable with that change, and goes back into the same thing of not actually, it's like you have a headache and you think, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a tablet. And if you take the tablet, okay, temporarily that painkiller will actually numbs the pain, so to say. But the actual pain, the actual cause of the pain is not gone away. And this is why
Yeah,
dog actually howls every time it happens, the pain.
right.
Not, he's not howling all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
dog actually, when he shuffles and when the pain comes, that he howls.
yeah,
So the moral of the story is you are right. You're absolutely right. That even in organization, even within the person, and people forget that the change is not an action, it's a process.
right, right.
You cannot, you see, you can motivate people instantly. You can give knowledge to people instantly. You can have external change instantly. Yeah, but the inner change cannot happen instantly. It needs to go through a process. And the process that you had earlier, that on the one of the discussions that we were having, that the process is, the first process is to acknowledge that
Yes,
requires the change.
yeah.
And the second one, as you know, what was the second one that we were
In fact,
talking?
the second one, So the first one is to acknowledge it. The second one is to accept the existing situation to start with. And then we start responding to the situation, and we then learn from the situation. And the fifth point is, because of this cycle, we grow. The growth is coming because we learned from the change that happened, whether it was a good change or whether it was not so good change. uh, that will lead us to grow. And using the dog example, if the dog is not going to learn from the nail and the pain, then it keeps on repeating, and probably he will keep on doing until the pain is so big that the dog has actually got hurt. And by the time we need to do something more, not than just shift a place from left to right. So in fact, if you look at cycles, the cost of fixing an error in the beginning is very less. And if you wait too long in the business cycle, the cost of fixing the error is really, really high,
That's
uh,
right.
because you have to start from scratch and undo a huge number of things. If we reduce that cycle, this is another learning that comes here, that it's not a bad thing to have change. It's not a bad thing to have pain and so on. But when you reduce this cycle and start learning fast, what's happening now is that we are using these little changes to create huge growth in the long run. And that's very powerful, because all of a sudden we have crossed the mountain a foot at a time, a step at a time, instead of worrying about the entire mountain.
That's right, and that's absolutely right that you said that change is a process, and the process can only happen when you take little by little the path. And but going back to the story of the dog, the difference between a dog, any human species, and a human species, the difference is this, which is we can think about our thinking. So if our thinking is not actually helping us to make that change or go towards that change, or you know, like you said, work out where the actual problems are, i.e. not taking tablets, uh, but going to the cause, root cause, and actually putting that right, so that change is sustained over a longer period of time, rather than change which just happened and then you require another type of change because the change was right. These are the key points in a corporate world as well as in a personal life. They're parallel. They're parallel because it needs to start with person's thinking.
Yeah,
And that leads me to the change, which has exactly similar word, which is begins with C as well, which is you need a commitment to change.
of course. Yeah. And that commitment will keep you on for every step until everything becomes permanent for the positive change.
So,
Yeah. In fact, that brings me to two topics right now, because you did mention change and corporate, and at the same time, I was waiting for some of the participants to speak here, but we can actually take some questions offline as well,
mhm,
and continue the discussion. But
yeah.
speaking from the corporate perspective, um our intended topic for next week is, how is this personal change and personal improvement going to help us in the corporate world? Because many people look at it in different ways. The corporate side is looked with processes, and the personal side is looked with emotions. And it could not be further from truth, because they are intertwined. And one of the overall topic for for next week is how this mind and processes can be used in the corporate side. We will be also collecting some topics from our audience who have been pinging, and We will be selecting a couple of topics because we want our audience to present even in these quick calls, short calls in future, because that starts the interaction and the discussion. Having said that, um, we reach the end of this short call. It was a very powerful story, Yogi, and I would like you to say some more things before we conclude.
No, yeah, thank you for that, and I'd like to yes, thank you everybody for turning up. Um, and like you said, yes, by all means, your contribution is more than welcome because we will like uh, if you don't need to speak there because you are at work and you're just listening,
Yes.
then you can just send us your contribution or questions via putting comments after this video link, and we will definitely come back to you, and we'll take that consideration as well for the next
In fact, we have made a repository for all the past recordings, and that will be published and spread around a lot because a bunch of us do not have the time right now, but they are excited to see that in looking at the statistics, a lot of people are watching it in their evening times or leisure hours, and we sincerely thank all of them.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Yogi.